So tonight, the C Team is very excited about our guest. She's the author of over 17 books, soon to be 18, translated in over 20 languages, which cover a vast range of topics, including past lives, ETs and UFOs, abductions, famous historical figures such as Nostradamus and Jesus, the lost continent of Atlantis, the shift in consciousness and the new Earth, and the list literally goes on. She has received several Lifetime Achievement Awards, as well as being the first North American recipient of Bulgaria's Orpheus Award for the highest advancements in the research of psychic phenomenon. I've had the pleasure of reading a handful of her books now, and I can honestly say that they are the type of books you literally can't put down due to the amount of information that's compiled in each one. These are topics that will challenge and reshape people's understanding of the universe in which we live. I call it a rabbit hole, and it takes you across universes and dimensions. At 83 years old, this remarkable woman is still going strong, so she's traveling the world as an international lecturer and teaching her uniquely designed technique from her decades of work as a regressive hypnotherapist. Everyone, we're talking with the incredible Dolores Cannon. Dolores, welcome.
Okay, thanks for having me on tonight.
Yes, it's a pleasure. We're really excited. We've been wanting to do this for a while, and we finally made it happen. How are you, my friend?
You just had to catch me between trips.
Yes, you're a busy lady these days.
I have been for a long time. I haven't slowed down yet anyway.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with us tonight. Where were you? Okay. Where did you just travel from? What's been on the agenda lately?
Well, right now it's been a little slow, if you want to call it slow. We've only been traveling back and forth to England because I have an office in England.
Right.
On my publishing company that takes care of the continent over there. But before that, we were all over Asia and Australia. We go all over Europe. We're going all the time. But, last month I did the UFO conference, so I haven't been traveling as extensive because I've been focusing on these conferences.
Yes, you've been the guest of honor.
Then I have the upcoming one. It'll be another couple of weeks.
That's right.
We haven't been traveling as much out of the country right now anyway.
That's right. You have the Ozark Transformation Conference coming up in Springdale, Arkansas, correct?
Yeah, that's our 9th one.
Wow. And that's
what?
That's the solstice weekend.
Yeah, I guess it is. We started that one. This is our 9th year. I started it for my authors because, we have the Ozark Mountain Publishing.
That's right.
And I have over 50 authors, and we put out at least 5 to 10 new books every year because we have hundreds and hundreds of submissions of people want their books published. And we started it back 9 years ago to give my authors a chance to get out there and lecture because a lot of them have never spoken anywhere. They've never made any public appearances. We thought this would be a good way to get their feet wet. But instead of getting their feet wet, we threw them into the deep end of the pool because we immediately started having over 400 people at the conference. But I think it was good for them to get out there and realize they can lecture and they can promote their work.
Absolutely.
That's the main thing for the Transformation Conference.
Yeah, it seems like the interest is growing at a rapid pace for this kind of subject matter, and I think your conferences are a testament to that. So it's amazing. We're really excited about this chat, and I can say that our CE audience is really excited as well. We recently featured an article about your book, The 3 Waves of Volunteers and the New Earth, and it immediately went viral around the web and Facebook. People are already ready for this type of information, I think.
Well, that's what's interesting because when I began this, I started my work 45 years ago in the 1960s. Nobody knew anything about this. There was no New Age. There was no metaphysics. If you ask anything about, they didn't know what reincarnation was in the Western world. And if you would ask something about past lives or reincarnation, they'd look at you like you were crazy. And if you did talk about it, they think you were working with the devil or having seances and talking to the dead. So that's where I began 45 years ago. Nobody was into any of this at all. So I've seen it grow over all that time and how it has changed. And now, I guess in the last 10 years, I've seen a dramatic jump. Because when I lecture, I lecture all over the world, and the audience, we always fill the auditorium. And now the people are saying, we just found out about you. We didn't even know anything about you until the last month. And I said, that's strange, because I haven't been hiding. I've been doing this work a long time, and my books have been out since the 1980s, but they found me on the Internet. So that shows you the power now of the computers and the Internet. And a lot of these people in the audiences now are young people. So I see it as the Internet generation is the one that's creating this shift in consciousness, if you want to call it that, to where people are waking up and they're becoming interested in this. For before, they're just dragging along, not knowing about any psychic phenomena at all. So I've seen it all develop, little by little. I feel like I've been in the middle of it all those years.
No kidding. I mean, it is remarkable times that we live in with the Internet and its ability to connect everybody around the world. I mean, it's a really inspiring time to be in. And on that note, Dolores, for our listeners who may not be fully acquainted with your work, let's take them way back to how this path all started for you. So how did you become involved in regressive hypnotherapy, and how did that lead to the kind of work that you're doing today?
That's not a fast story. The first book I ever wrote was called 5 Lives Remembered, tells how I got involved in this in the 1960s when I said nobody was doing any of it. And I was involved with hypnosis, but in those days, the only thing you used hypnosis for was habits, stop smoking, lose weight, or relaxation.
Yes.
Nobody would have even thought about going back into time and doing time travel like I do now. Nobody would ever have thought of anything like that. It was all done just for habits. And my husband and I were doing it. And he was career Navy, 21 years in the Navy. And he just got back from Vietnam when we were stationed in Texas. And it all started with a doctor on the base contacted us and said he had a patient who had what he called nervous eating. She was having kidney problems and high blood pressure. And he said, can you just get her to relax? That's all I want you to do. Just get her to relax, and we'll see if that might help. And we did. We just did simple hypnosis that we knew in those days, the long, drawn-out techniques. But the interesting thing was, when we did this, she suddenly jumped into a past life in Chicago in the Roaring 20s, in the flapper era, with the gangs and everything.
Right.
And it was, like, what in the world is going on here? But a lot of people would have been frightened because nobody knew about anything like this. But my trademark has always been curiosity. I want to know more. I want to ask questions. I want to know what's going on. So we continued working with this woman, and it opened doors that we never would have ever suspected. And that's what started me on the whole career, was working with her. But but anyway, in those days there wasn't anything like this. But it's a long story. We're making a movie on the book now.
Oh, you are? Tell us about that.
Yeah. That's it. See, you don't know half of the projects I'm involved with. But no, they want to make a movie on that book to show the mindset of people back in the 1960s when we started, how nobody knew anything about this, and the ridicule and what you have to go through if you step outside of what is accepted and the norm and are go down a path that nobody knows anything about.
Oh, I can only imagine.
We're making a movie on that now.
Yes, that sounds like a very fascinating movie.
Well, it shows you that I'm really getting more and more involved in many, many things.
Yes, your hands are wet for sure. Going back to the hypnosis, I mean, I know a lot of people are drawn to it because they're interested in the healing benefits of, past life regression. Maybe tell us.
Now, You remember in the old days, nobody knew anything about how to heal with that. That's why I'm a pioneer in how all this began.
Yes, I mean, you've developed this specific technique that you're now teaching worldwide. So maybe tell us a little bit about that, Dolores.
Well, whenever I said this all happened by accident, and we took this woman, we worked with her for 3 months, taking her through several lifetimes, and it was really exciting. But then later, when I wanted to continue doing this, there was no classes out, there were no books out telling you how to do past life regression, so I had to invent my own technique. And that's when I began doing past life therapy in the early 70s, when nobody was doing anything like that. And I work in the deepest possible level of trance, which is called the somnambulistic level. And the other hypnosis methods say you never want to work there because strange things happen when you work in the deep levels. And I tell people, if you read any of my books, you know strange things happen there. But
Absolutely.
that's where you get all the answers. The regular hypnosis want to keep the client in the light level, where they remember a lot of it, but they're not going to have the results that I have. But as I went along with this over all those years, it began to change. This is after I'd already written 5 or 6 books. They were dealing with history in the beginning, going back into time and being there when historical events were happening. And then it began to change, and I began to find out about the healing benefits. So that had to evolve over many years. So now that is what I'm teaching mostly, is how to do the healing, because we found a way to have instant healing of any disease or ailment or anything in just one session. It's amazing and remarkable.
Yes.
And I've now trained over 4,000 people in all the countries of the world, and they're doing the same thing that I'm doing.
Wow. I mean, that's extending your work, because I'm sure that it got to a point pretty soon that you couldn't help people because there was just so many people that were looking for your help.
I know. I had an 8-year waiting list.
Oh, wow.
Then I knew, I had to start. I knew back when I started teaching this, it's been about 12 years ago, I knew then I was going to have to start teaching because I'm just one person.
That's
and
right.
At the beginning, I didn't know, could I teach this? If you invent something, if you discover something, you know it works. But do you know if you can show others how to do it? That's when I didn't know. So I met my first class. I called it the guinea pig class because I didn't know if I could teach it or not. And it's grown from there. And it's just now perfected to where people are getting it. I have doctors and psychiatrists. Lots of medical people have taken the class, and they're incorporating it in with their practice. We work with natural healing and alternative medicine doctors all over the world. So we're really involved in, it's not the cutting edge anymore, but, of how it's all going to go to the ability of the mind to heal the body.
That's right. And, I mean, Collective Evolution is a huge advocate of the power of our mind, the power of our thoughts. I mean, it's basically manipulating energy. So, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, this is how it works. You have a client and you regress them, and they go back to a past life where they have some kind of emotional trauma that they have been fixated on, and that energetically is imprinted and carries over into their current life. And that manifests either emotionally or physically. And so by going back in the past life, dealing with this and facing these traumas, they're able to release those and heal themselves in the current life.
That's very simplified, and that's only the tip of the iceberg. That's the very beginning. It goes much more further than that.
Yes, of course.
Because sometimes even the past life isn't where the source of the trouble is.
That's right.
Just finding the past life is not what does the healing. I found another way to do that, and that's where it's very remarkable the way I discovered this. I work with the greatest power in the universe. There's nothing higher than it. And this is how I teach all of my students how you contact this power. Once you contact it and you bring it through, I've done thousands and thousands and thousands of clients over all these years. But I found a way to have this come through every single one of them. The past life will give you some answers, but it's not going to give you everything. But then you move on to this other part. It has all of the answers, and it does the instant healing. It's remarkable to see what it does.
So, Dolores, would you say this is what we term as source consciousness?
It's more than that. Well, I said some people, if you want to call it, you might say it's the higher self, the oversoul, the higher consciousness, the universal consciousness. I call it the subconscious because I didn't know what else to call it. I didn't know what it was when I discovered it. So that's all I called it. But it's not the subconscious the way the psychiatrists define it. That is a childish part of your mind. That's what the hypnotist uses for habits. But that's not what I'm working with. But I didn't know what else to call it, so I called it the subconscious. My students now say the SC. But when I got them, they said, we don't care what you call us. We don't have a name anyway. We'll work with you. But
That's right.
It is the most powerful, remarkable thing you could ever imagine to work with.
Yeah, so I'm sure.
If you were to witness some of this, when it comes into the person's body, they send a powerful white light energy into the body, and it goes immediately to where the problem is. And they're the ones that do the healing. I said, I don't. I'm just a facilitator. But to say it's the past life, that's very simplified. That is just the very beginning of the iceberg, tip of the iceberg. Any hypnotist can do a past life regression if they know how, but they don't know the rest of it, how you can take it further. And you can create, I see miracles every day in my office, and it's absolutely amazing.
Oh, I can only imagine. I mean, from what I've read in your books, the experiences that you've had with clients is, I mean, most people wouldn't believe it. I mean, it just seems like fiction because it's so interesting and surreal.
I know I had one man one time in the early days in one of my lectures said, you've got to be the best fiction writer in the world. And I said, I wish you could tell me how I could make all this stuff up. I'd really like to know.
No kidding. That would be a wild imagination, that's for sure.
Because in the Convoluted Universe books, where we were again getting into concepts and theories that nobody knows. They were totally unheard of. But with my curiosity, I want to know more and more and more. And that's why the Convoluted Universe books now have 4 volumes in that set. And they're 600-700 pages.
Yeah.
And I'm still writing more on those because I keep getting more and more complicated stuff. But I said those are books for people who want their minds spent like pretzels.
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't know people could understand them when I began writing them. But they said, we may not understand it, but it really makes us think. And that's what this whole time right now is all about, bringing back psychic powers, reawakening those parts of our minds. The veil is thinning. You know, the veil has been down for a long time. They say that people have been sleepwalking. It's time to wake them up.
Yes, for sure. I mean, we take this back to, I'm sure you're aware of authors such as Michael Newton and the work of Dr. Even Stevenson. And Michael Newton, he's written extensively about our soul's journey through reincarnation, as well as the experience.
The only thing Michael Newton writes about is the in-between lives, the spirit side.
That's right. And
that's a small part. I've written books on that also. That's only a small part of your journey.
That's right. I mean,
Ian Stevenson was one of the very first pioneers to ever get involved in reincarnation at all.
Yes, that was decades ago. I mean, your book, In Between Life and Death, you talk about this journey as well.
Yes.
Dolores, what have you learned about what our soul ultimately wants to attain through this reincarnation cycle? Maybe go into a bit into what happens in between lives.
Oh, that's what I like the best, is in between lives, because that's where you figure everything out and see what you did wrong and what you want to repay when you come back. It's a whole cycle. And the book is called Between Death and Life. In that, it takes you full cycle, what it's like to die, where you go on the other side, and there's a whole lot of places you can go to. And then you make your plans to come back. But the most important thing is there is no judging. There's nobody sitting on a throne up there ready to judge you and throw you into hell. There's no hell anyway.
Right.
But you judge yourself, and there's no harsher judge than you yourself. You figure out what you did wrong and how you have to repay it. But the ultimate thing that the soul is here to accomplish is it's a school. And we're here to learn as many lessons as possible. So what life is all about is having experiences and learning lessons. And then when you finally get through everything, and it takes a long, long time, they said the Earth school is a very long school. You can't get out till you graduate. And you have to repeat classes again and again and again. If you don't get it right the first time, you failed that grade, you're going to take it over again. So that can go on for a long time. It's just a matter of, well, how many times do you want to repeat the same thing? So it makes a lot of sense whenever you really get down to what it's all about.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and one of the topics, you're kind of getting into that, so we'll move into it, but one of the topics collective evolution discusses quite extensively is the shift in consciousness that's taking place around the globe. It was actually the premise behind our third feature documentary, The Collective Evolution 3, The Shift. And I mean, we're seeing the awakening of the masses with regards to awareness being spread about the various systems which have been in place and which have been holding us back from, I want to say, our evolution as a species. And you wrote about this in your 2011 book, The Three Waves of Volunteers in the New Earth. So tell us what you discovered through your work with regards to the souls incarnating on Earth in the past 4 decades and their mission for our planet during this time.
Well, that again is a complicated story. But we are evolving because, I mean, I see this all over the world that we're changing. Time is speeding up. Everything is changing, and we are beginning to finally open up, and the psychic abilities are coming back. It was only the first of this year we were in Beijing for 2 weeks, and I had over 100 people in my class there, and they were telling me, we know something is happening. We can feel it. The other people don't pay attention, but we know it's all around us. How can people say something is not happening? So the ones who are waking up and are aware of this are very much in tune with what's happening to our world.
And
go ahead.
In the book, you talked about how there was a call for help. I mean, at a higher level, for souls to come to this planet and to help assist in raising our vibration. And you said that they began coming in the 1960s, I believe. Is that correct?
No, right after the Second World War, when we dropped the atomic bomb.
That's right.
The baby boomers. The baby boomers are the first wave that came in.
So these ETs, they're just as concerned about these bombs going off as we are, and why is that, Dolores?
Oh, it's much more complicated than just to say something like that. You have to go back to my other books about where we came from in the beginning and how we were created and how we've been watched over as a species since the beginning of Earth. I've covered that in a lot of my other books, and how they take care of us and watch us, but they cannot interfere. This is the main directive, just like Star Trek, non-interference. Once a civilization has begun, you cannot interfere with its development. I'm talking about ETs because they are the ones who created us anyway. And this goes back to my books, Keepers of the Garden And the custodians is my 26 years of working with UFO cases. And the stories are in there, and then the Convoluted Universe books on how we were created and the planet was seeded, and they've been taking care of us and watching us all those since the beginning of the Earth. We are the grand experiment, but they can't interfere. They have to allow us to just make our own mistakes. We're the only planet in the universe that has been allowed to have free will. This means we can make mistakes, and all they can do is just sit there and watch us and shake their head. As I said, well, can't you come in and tell us we're not doing it correctly? And they said, no, that is interference. But the only time they could ever interfere in the planet would be if we were to get to the point we were going to blow the planet up. Because if we did that, it would cause reverberations through all of the galaxy and into other dimensions. So they cannot allow that to happen. It came close at least 3 times in the history of Earth. And I've written about these things in the Convoluted Universe series about how one of the civilizations that was destroyed was Atlantis. But there were at least 3 more before that, where we reached the point that we could manipulate energy. We had such control over energy, we could do anything with our minds. But then man, being what he is, decided he wanted control, and greed came in. And each time they got to the point they could have blown up the world. At that point, they had to step in and destroy the world. And they always left a few of the species to continue the human race. But it meant they had to start all over again from the primitive state. And it takes too long to build it up again to the technology. And they said, now we are at that state again where we could destroy the world. That's why the atomic bomb was so important when that happened. They said, we better get down there and see what these kids are playing with. We were not supposed to have atomic power at that time. It was too soon. They said, because they knew the human race could not handle anything like that. I lecture for hours on this. That's why it's very hard for me to break it down into such a short thing.
Yes, of course.
But, I've lost my train of thought there. But the people, it'll come back in a minute.
So
the human race has been caught on the wheel of karma for eons.
Right,
and going back again and again and again because you have to repay the karma. You got to come back and do it again. So they knew the human race, being caught on the wheel of karma, would never be able to handle atomic power. That we would destroy the world. They said when we were supposed to get atomic power, we were supposed to be using it for good. And I said, well, we are using it for good. We're using it for power. They said it will never be what it was supposed to be because it will always have the negativity, the negative aura of a weapon. So it will never be what it was intended to be. So knowing this, they knew we could destroy the world. That's when they send out the call for volunteers. Earth is in trouble. Who wants to come and help Earth? And they only wanted pure souls, souls who had never been on Earth before, souls that didn't have karma, that were not contaminated, because they would be the ones, their energy would be so pure and powerful, they would be the ones who could save the Earth. And that's when the call went out for the volunteers. And in the book, it's in 3 waves. And I found all this out from years of getting the same story from hundreds and hundreds of people. And I began to put it all together, and I said, this is a real theory. That's when I came up with their ages and the characteristics of the 3 waves.
Right. Could you just maybe summarize that a little bit for our listeners? Because I know that there's a big interest in that.
I know. Everywhere I go, all over the world, I have people in the audience are crying And they said, finally, it makes sense. I'm one of them. Because they said, I thought all my life I was the only one in the world that felt this way. Now, to find out there's others, that makes such a huge difference. I'm not alone anymore. We get thousands of emails on this, and, and I know it's real. But, like I said, this is a long topic. But the characteristics of the first, especially the first wave, see, they came in right after the bomb was dropped at the end of World War II. That's when they had to come in. And the baby boomer generation was a lot of babies born at one time.
Yes.
Man, I had to get a drink. So, when they come in, some of the characteristics are they don't want to be here. They don't like it here. They don't understand human beings. They don't understand the violence in the world. Why do people hurt each other? Why do people kill each other? It doesn't make any sense to them. And they keep saying, I want to go home. I don't know where home is, but I know it's not here. And they feel very alien to this planet because it doesn't make any sense to them. This is the most difficult planet in the universe to live on. It's the densest, the heaviest. We're the lowest of the low as far as vibrations and frequencies are concerned. And it takes a lot of courage to come to Earth and agree to live on Earth. And then to have these pure souls who have never been here before. Many of them have never even been in a body. And they come into this mess that we call Earth. It's very hard for them. And I've worked with many of these who they wanted to commit suicide to get out. They couldn't take it. But suicide's not the answer anyway because you got to come back and do it again anyhow.
That's right.
You don't get out of anything.
So you were saying that this suicidal tendencies were common in the first wave.
Well, that's what I was just saying.
That's right.
But the second wave is a little different. The first wave is the one that had it the hardest. I think now you could see they started being born in the late 40s. They'd probably be 50s, maybe early 60s by now in their ages. But then I've been writing about this for 30 years, so I've seen how it all has evolved and the people involved with this, how they've been changing. But I've had a lot of them tell me they would be a little kid and they're standing in the kitchen talking to their mother and saying, Mom, I want to go home. And their mom would say, but you are home. And they said, no, I'm not. This is not home. And they never could understand why they felt that way. And many of them remembered being on the spirit side when the call went out. They had meetings, and they said, who wants to go and volunteer and help Earth? And some of them in my sessions would say, I stupidly raised my hand. What was I thinking of? Because they get here, and it's not at all what they thought it was going to be. But the first wave had it hardest. And I asked them one time, why was it so hard with the first wave? They said because somebody had to be the trailblazer. Somebody had to be the one to set the path for the others to follow. So it was very difficult for them to come into a world that was totally alien and unknown to them. The second wave are younger. I think they're like 20s, 30s. Some of these waves overlap, too.
Okay.
The second wave had it easier. They are more, I call them antennas, generators, channelers of energy, because they have a very unique energy that is so powerful that all they have to do is walk through a crowded mall of people, and that energy affects everybody they come in contact with. It's that powerful. And, of course, these people don't know this, because when you come to Earth, you forget everything.
Right.
That's what the veil is. It means you forget everything when you come into Earth. So the second wave had this powerful energy, and this is the energy that is needed to save the Earth. And so they're the ones that had it easier. But it's ironic, these people, they would rather work out of their homes. They don't usually get married. They don't usually want to have children because children create karma. But they would rather be alone. And that's the paradox. That's the ironic part about it, is they're supposed to be helping people with their energy, but yet they'd rather be alone.
So they're caught up in the density of the vibration of this planet.
Yeah, and that's why they'd rather work for themselves out of their homes and stay away from people, because it's very hard on that to be around that energy. But the second waves are very important. I have all my clients, every time they come to see me, they have one question on their list of questions. It's always the same question. I call it the universal question. It's, what's my purpose? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? Everybody wants to know that.
The big question.
So whenever I get one of these second waves, the SC, this part I work with, will always tell them if it's appropriate. And they said, you're not supposed to do anything. You're just supposed to be, because your energy is affecting everyone, and they don't know it. But I had one man, he said, yeah, but I want to do something. They said, you are doing something just by being. So that's what these different souls have come in to do. And the second waves are also observers. They're watching everything that happens. And all of this is being recorded in the gigantic computer bases, computer databases up in the sky or wherever you want to put it. So there's a lot going on that people don't understand.
Oh yes, it's a rabbit hole like we were talking about before. And I just wanted to bring attention to this group or these beings that are watching over us and kind of making the decisions around the betterment of our evolution. I mean, if you can explain, I know it's a pretty vast, complicated subject, but who are these groups, these beings?
I told you they're ETs.
So they're all ETs.
Yes.
And they're
since the beginning of the time, their job is to go throughout the universes and look for planets that show signs that they'll be able to produce life. And whenever the planet has cooled down enough with like the Earth with the erupting volcanoes, and I've had people who were there when all of this was happening, when the Earth was still erupting volcanoes and the air was all contaminated, how it had to all be cooled down before life could begin. Well, these groups of people, they're called the archaic ones, or the ancient ones, have been doing this, going from planet to planet, universes and solar systems, looking for planets that can support life. And when they do, that is a very momentous occasion in the history of that planet. And it goes into the record books, and the planet is given its life charter. And then these beings, and there's many, many different types. It's just like Star Wars or Star Trek. And they all have their different jobs that they do. And they come and see the planet. First you have to have water, then you have to have plants, then you have to have animals, and eventually intelligent life. And I followed all of these steps through my books and how it was all done deliberately to get us to this stage. So it's quite an amazing thing. But then with a grand experiment, they can't interfere. They just sit back and want to see how we're going to do this.
And you mentioned that in the past, I mean, there's been civilizations that have come to be, and they've they've fallen, and you mentioned there's a couple of these, correct?
I found at least 3 in my work, and they said there could be more, but there was at least 3 that they told me about.
So this obviously has to do with Atlantis, and then was Lemuria a part of this as well?
Well, that was all at the same time.
Okay.
Lemuria came first. That was in the Pacific. And
That's right.
when it went down, it was Atlantis, it was in the Atlantic. But before that, there were other civilizations. And I had one where the scientists are the ones that would always be causing the problem, where the scientists burned a hole in the ozone layer. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? The sun came through, it burnt the earth and destroyed most of the inhabitants. This is where the Sahara Desert is today. Nothing will ever grow there again.
Wow.
So they said it's happened again and again and again. They said, this time we don't have time for you to start all over again from being a primitive state to work yourself back up to be an intelligent planet, a being. So they said, now we can't do it. So now we're bringing in the volunteers so we can keep going and not have to start all over again, because we were ready to do it again. So it all makes sense whenever they explain every little step of the way.
Yeah, it's a massive puzzle, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my job. I'm the reporter. I'm the investigator, the researcher of lost knowledge.
Yeah.
And I get a piece from one person and a piece from another person. I have to put it all together like a gigantic puzzle.
And you've done a good job at it. I've wanted to talk a little bit about the ETs, because there's this whole movement of people that are talking about bad ETs and ETs that have manipulated mankind and used the human beings for their own purpose. So from your own experience, do you feel that there's ETs with bad intent that are manipulating our planet at the time?
No.
You don't feel that?
No, because I know how this whole thing operates. And these people who are saying those things have not studied it enough to know. There are rules and regulations that you cannot go against. It's just like Star Trek. Incidentally, Star Trek was not fiction. It's just the way Star Trek was. There are rules and regulations. There are councils over everything. Councils over planets, councils over solar systems, councils over galaxies, councils over universes. There's rules and regulations that govern everything. And mankind is highly protected. Anything they are forbidden to harm a human being. They're forbidden to harm the grand experiment. So if a group of ETs were to come in here with bad intent, they would not be allowed to stay. This is why the other investigators, they jump on this bad ET stuff because they don't understand how the whole system works.
That's right.
So it's a very perfected system. As I know, I spoke at every UFO conference in the world. And there's always some speaker talking about, they're here to take over the world and all of this. And in one of my books, they said that. What do they say we're here to take over the world? It's ours. It always has been. And they said, we can't do anything as bad to you as you do to yourself.
Well, that's absolutely correct. I mean, and
there's going to be people who are going to think things like that, and they can think it if they want. But I've been 27 years now investigating ETs and UFOs. I have never found a negative case. What we would consider to be negative, when they explain it, makes perfect sense.
Right.
The other ones don't bother to investigate it to that point.
So do you feel there's a lot of misinformation out there then?
Definitely, and the government is really big at that, providing misinformation and disinformation. For some reason, they want to keep people frightened.
Yes. So where do abductions come into play then? How do they play into this whole picture?
How many hours do you have to talk?
We can do another show perhaps.
I've written 4 books on it.
Yeah, you've been involved since the mid-1980s, right, with ET phenomenon research?
Yeah, one of the very first ones to get into that. That's why I've had this UFO conference for 27 years. It's the oldest in the United States. Besides, they say, what do they call it, abductions? We bring them back. Nobody is ever taken against their will. You'd have to go back to understanding what happens when you die and when you're on the other side in the spirit world and making your plans to come back. Everybody makes a plan before they come into the world. This is what I hope to accomplish in this lifetime. And you make your contracts with all the other souls you're going to be involved with. You know, husbands, wives, friends, children. You make all of this is set up before you ever come into a world, to a life. Now, when you, oh boy, I had all this information flooding into my head at once. Okay, when you're making your plan, the ETs, well, they're just like us. They're just bodies. That's the spirit, it's the soul in a body. You've probably been an ET too. You don't know how many thousands of cases I've had where people were ETs before they came to Earth. They lived on other planets, other dimensions, on spaceships. I've got books full of those kind of stories. Well, right before you come into this world with making your plan, they will come to you and say, you know, while you're alive on Earth this time, we're going to be doing some interesting experiments. Do you want to be involved? And they say, yeah, count me in. And you sign a contract. But they said it's very confusing is that you get into this world, you forget your contract. They said, we don't. They remember their plan. They remember what they're here to do. You come in, you don't remember anything that you signed up to do and think somebody's doing things against your will. But nobody is ever taken against their will. They were agreed to do this, and it's all part of the grand experiment. And it would take too long to go into all the parts of what it is, what it has to do. But it will literally save the world and move us into a whole new dimensions, and it's beyond anything you could grasp. It just is sort of an interview.
Yes, of course. I mean, it's all in your books too, right?
Yes, it's all in there.
So do you think that these ETs, are they studying our DNA? Are they studying our evolution? Or in these abductions, I mean?
Well, naturally they're studying our evolutions because they're the ones that began us, that started us.
Right.
The DNA of everyone is being changed right now. This has been going on since these 3 waves began to come in. The ones that are coming in, their DNA is already changed because we have to cope with what we're going into. The vibrations and frequencies are changing so fast and they're so hard on the human body, the DNA has to be changed. But especially the new children, their DNA is already changed. The rest of us are the ones that have to catch up. So when you're sleeping at night, if you're part of this program, your DNA is being changed. It's interesting, we were in Japan, and we have practice there with the sessions, and they go off, and this is their very first time they've ever tried this technique. You know, they go off and have practice sessions, and one of them can come back and they tell us what they found. And one of them said, the SC told them, ask the class, how many hours a night do you sleep? Let me ask you, how many hours a night do you sleep?
8 hours.
That's good. Because they said you must sleep at least 8 hours. 8 to 9 hours is good. They need a deep sleep. They need that to work on your DNA. Because this is how the DNA is being changed and manipulated. It can't just suddenly go to 12 strand. It's impossible to do it that fast. And I know there's a lot of people having classes out there that say, come to our class, you will instantly get 12-strand DNA. Doesn't work that way. But they said while you're sleeping at night is when they're working on the body to change the DNA. It's needed to go into the new earth because the whole body has to change its vibrations and its frequencies.
That's right. Dolores, we have a question from a listener. He asks, what about people that have been abducted and have come back with stones or markings or implants?
Well, the implants are good.
So
They're wonderful. And it's all in my books, too. The implants are there to help you, to keep you healthy. It depends on what part of the body they're put in. But I knew Dr. Roger Lear, he would take these things out, and I told Roger that if they want them back in there, they'll put them back. He didn't understand the purpose.
Right.
And I know David Jacobs says they're there to trigger the person to become a robot to help destroy the world, which is utter nonsense. So the implants are in there so they can find you to come and help you if you need help. They're like, locators. But they put the implants in different parts of the body to make you healthy. And the abductions, a lot of that is they're taken on board the ships to have your energy adjusted from time to time to keep you healthy. And I have many people send me pictures of the markings on their body, and they said all that is some of the machines that they use to adjust the energy to keep you healthy. And they said it goes away, and it does. Within a few days, the markings are gone. But that's all it is. It's just machines they have to use to adjust the energy in the human body. See what I mean? They start thinking right away, it's something bad, it's something negative, without understanding the big picture of what's really happening here. Right.
I think that it's a common thing for people to get stuck in fear of things where they don't understand. And,
the only planet in the universe that has fear.
Wow.
You've got to get rid of fear. Fear is
limiting.
What it is. Well, the fear goes back to our animal nature.
Right.
They said the only thing that's real is love. And that's what people have to switch over. When they get to love, you're not going to have any violence. You're not going to have any wars. And that's been the message since the beginning of time.
And that's what we're evolving out of, right? We're evolving out of that archaic, animalistic, origin and moving into almost, from what I've read, an energy being.
Yeah, eventually, when we get to the new Earth, quite a ways from now, we will be light beings.
That's right.
We'll have a body at first, but then it will gradually change into a light being.
That's the end goal, yes. We have another question, Dolores, from a listener as well.
But there's so much to this that I feel like I'm running a race to try to even get in 1/10 of the information. You just got to read my books. There's too much.
Exactly.
Go ahead. What's the question?
Yeah, well, I was going to say that's 40 years of information piled into books. We're not going to get into it all in 1 hour show, but this person wants to know what would someone do to work with the healing energy that you work with?
What do they do?
What can they do? Yeah, to work with the same type of energy that you're working with. I mean, and this is what you talk about with your quantum healing technique.
Well, it's done with hypnosis. And they have a session, and they go into this deep level of hypnosis. And when they're there is when the energy comes in. But you can do it with meditation, but you're just not going to be able to go as deep. Because, as long as that old stupid conscious mind is there, it's always trying to interfere. You have to get that conscious mind out of the way. The only way to do that is to take them into the deepest possible level. That's what I've developed in my technique, is how to get the conscious mind out of the way, get them deep. Then the SC, the subconscious, can come in and perform its miracles. So
right.
The only way they can do it, they have to have a session with somebody.
And you said you've trained, thousands of people. So if someone were just to look up quantum healing practitioner, I'm sure they could find one somewhere close to them at least.
Yeah, it's on our website. We have all the people who have taken the class, and they're divided by states in America and by countries. So they can contact one of these people. But you got to remember, like anything, it takes practice. It takes years of practice. Like any kind of a class or a technique, if you're even a doctor, they have to have years of practice. So we suggest to try to find a practitioner near you and then check them out. Go and talk to them and see how you feel. If you feel comfortable with them, then work with them. If you don't, well, then they're not the ones for you. But we've trained over 4,000 people now, and I'm trying to keep from having so many trips out of the country. So we're doing the class online now. And a lot of people are taking that.
Oh, perfect.
And we have level 2. In fact, I'm going to have a level 2 connected with this transformation conference in 2 weeks. But in order to take level 2, that is a more individualized, personal interaction between the students and myself. But in order to take level 2, you have to first take level 1. And level 1 is a 5-day class. Then the level 2 is 3 days. But you have to have level 1 and have at least done 10 practice sessions before you're ready for level 2.
I love that you're offering this online because I feel like it's relevant for our time, and I think that's what we're moving towards too. So that's going to help a lot of people, I think.
Because every country I go, they want me to keep coming back in more and more countries, and I just can't keep traveling all over the world. So we're letting technology take over. We are having one class in America that's going to be in September. In fact, I think it's the only live class in the world. We'll be doing level 2 in other parts of the world for the ones who've already taken the class. But the only live class is going to be in September, and that's going to be here in Arkansas.
Okay.
So if anybody's interested in that, our classes have been going at least 100 people.
Wow, it's growing, absolutely. And then your Ozark Mountain Transformation Conference coming up, are you going to be talking more about this technique, or are you going to be offering any lectures or classes around this technique?
We're doing a level 2, but that's for those who want to stay afterwards to do that. No, during the conference, I'll just be talking about my work and information that I've discovered.
That's right.
It's what the conference is about. It's lectures. And we have amazing lectures. I'm bringing in Robert Baval from Spain, and he has been on the Ancient Aliens shows.
Yes.
And he studies the pyramids and all of these mysteries. He's going to be doing 2 lectures. I'm bringing in Blair Styra from New Zealand. He's the most famous psychic in New Zealand. And he'll be there, and he'll also be doing private sessions. And then I have my authors, too, but we have wonderful people of all kinds of variety of metaphysical topics. So it's going to really be a good event.
Yeah, the lineup looks amazing. If anyone has a chance to check it out, it's in Springdale, Arkansas, on the June solstice weekend, so the 20th to the 22nd. Dolores, we just have another question from a listener.
Okay, I want to tell you, though, if you come to the conference, we're including a 3-course lunch buffet is included in the price of the conference, so you can't beat that.
No, absolutely. Got to be fed, that's for sure.
Yeah, what's the question?
So have you ever heard of ayahuasca? It's a plant healing medicine.
I think the last show I just did, somebody asked me about, it's probably one of these, like sacred mushrooms, different ones, different Indian groups use different
yes,
plants.
Different shamanic practices, yes. They use different plant medicines and use those spirits. What do you think about this? Are these tools planted by these extraterrestrials? Are they the same energy from the spirits
I don't recommend using any kind of a mind-altering drug. Now, in the shamanic practices and the Indians, they use these drugs. They've used them for, centuries. But they are only done, supposedly, in their ceremonies. So the person goes out of their body. They have all kinds of, hallucinations, to where they can see different things as part of the ceremony. They're not supposed to be used for recreation use like a lot of people do with different kinds of drugs. If it's part of a religion in that way, I can't see any harm in it. But people abuse the privilege. They go and want to be in that state all the time, and that's just not good for them.
That's right. So you said taking it in a sacred space and using it with respect in regards to the shamanic origins is the way to do it, but you wouldn't recommend doing it recreationally.
No, I don't recommend any recreation drugs because they do change your mind and alter things that you don't need to have changed. You
right.
can do enough with meditation is excellent. That's very good for the body.
That's right. You're saying that we have the power ourselves as a being. You don't need an external helping from all these other sources.
We don't need that.
So we're running out of time here, Dolores, but we could keep this conversation going for hours with the amount of topics that we have available. But before we finish up, let's talk about what you are working on next. I mean, I know that you are about to release a new book this summer called The Search for Sacred Knowledge.
Yeah, everybody is expecting another Convoluted Universe book. And I'm working on one of those. Convoluted 5 is about halfway done, and I'm still getting information from different clients that come to see me. But the other one, these are all accumulation of cases. You're going back 20, 30 years, but this one deals with a knowledge that we had in the very beginning when life formed on Earth and whenever the ETs were here and they interbred with humans, and this was the beginning of the pharaohs and the Egyptians, and all of the powers they had in those days and how it was passed down and became diluted as it did. And it's showing where all of these powers are really natural to the human. And we're right now in the stages of getting all of this back. It's our natural right to have psychic abilities. And it's perfectly okay to do these things with the mind. And in the book, I talk about the cases that we've had where all down through history, of course, they were abused, they were burned at the stake, they were killed because they were different. So it's some of the stories like that. So it's not a convoluted book. It's other ones about history and the different sacred knowledge I've uncovered over many years of putting all this together.
Wow, I'm really excited for that book. I mean, I can say that you've really made an impact on my life, and I know that so many others out there can say the same thing. You're such an inspiring woman, Dolores, and your work really speaks for itself. And for our listeners, if you're ready to have your minds bent, get yourself a copy of Dolores' book. You won't be able to put them down, I assure you that. Dolores, we can't...
Find them on our website if you want to give that out.
Yes, absolutely. You can find it through Dolores' Ozark Mountain Publishing website. They're available through Kindle edition as well, which is really nice. I know that's what we're moving towards, and it's kind of nice to have all your books compiled on little tablets instead of having a big collection of books.
Yeah, it's all going toward ebooks now.
Yes, absolutely. And
they're in all the stores, but if you go online on our site, you'll see everything we have available. Not just mine, but all the other authors that we publish.
That's right, because
we're going to be having a pre-sale on the new book. We're going to be sending out flyers on that. Take pre-orders for it before it's printed.
Yes, it's going to be an exciting book. I think that idea of the search for sacred knowledge, I mean, I think that's what we're all looking for at this point, and I think that your books offer a great medium for that kind of stuff. So, Dolores, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this show with us.
Okay. All right, and thanks for having me come on.
Yes, absolutely. And everyone from the entire CE team, we wish you a fantastic evening. And remember, be the change you wish to see. So good night, everyone.
Okay, good night.